The foreclosure notice trembled in Evelyn Carter's weathered hands as 15 Hells Angels thundered through the blizzard to her diner's door. She had exactly 7 days and $47 left. But what happened next would transform a dying woman's last act of kindness into a legend that would echo across every highway in America. Friends, this is a story about how one night of compassion became an avalanche of redemption. Stick with me until the end and drop a comment about where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this incredible tale travels. The wind howled like a wounded animal through the Colorado mountains, driving snow sideways across Highway 70, with such violence that the road disappeared entirely beneath a shifting white shroud. Inside the Midnight Haven diner, Evelyn Carter sat alone at the counter, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows across the empty booths that once bustled with life. She stared at the 2 pieces of paper spread before her on the cracked Formica counter. The first was a bank statement showing a balance of $47.16. The second, delivered just that morning by a process server who'd barely made it through the storm, was a foreclosure notice. 7 days. That's all she had left before the bank took everything: the diner that had been her life for 32 years, the small apartment above it, where she'd raised her daughter, where she'd held her husband Tom's hand as cancer slowly stole him away. 7 days, she whispered to the empty diner, her voice barely audible above the storm's fury. The words felt foreign in her mouth, like trying to speak a language she'd never learned. How did it come to this? How did a lifetime of hard work, of feeding hungry travelers and lonely truckers, of being a beacon of warmth on this cold stretch of highway, amount to nothing more than $47 and a piece of paper telling her to get out? The coffee maker gurgled behind her, the only other sound besides the storm. She'd made a full pot out of habit, even though no one would brave this weather for her mediocre coffee and day-old pie. Not anymore. The regulars had stopped coming months ago when the new truck stop opened 15 miles east with its gleaming chrome fixtures and franchise restaurants. The Midnight Haven, with its cracked vinyl seats and hand-painted sign, couldn't compete. Evelyn stood slowly, her joints protesting, after sitting too long in the cold. At 71, every movement required negotiation with her body. She walked to the window and pressed her palm against the frozen glass, feeling the storm's power vibrating through it. The parking lot was invisible beneath 2 feet of snow, her old Buick, nothing more than a white mound near the road. Even if she wanted to leave to run from this final humiliation, the storm had trapped her here. "Just like you to go out with a whimper, Evie," she said to her reflection in the dark window. Tom would have hated seeing her like this, defeated, ready to surrender. He'd built this place with his own hands, laying every tile, installing every booth. When he was dying, he'd made her promise to keep it going. "This place is more than just a diner," he'd said, his voice barely a whisper by then. "It's hope for people who don't have any left. Promise me you'll keep that light on." She'd kept that promise for 5 years after he passed. But promises didn't pay bills. Hope didn't satisfy the bank. The grandfather clock in the corner, another relic Tom had restored, struck 9 o'clock. In better times, this would be peak hours, truckers stopping for coffee and conversation, families heading to Denver, grabbing a quick meal. Now the silence was so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. That's when she heard it, a low rumble beneath the wind's shriek, growing louder, more distinct. Engines. Multiple engines, their synchronized roar cutting through the storm like thunder. Evelyn moved closer to the window, squinting through the frost patterns. Headlights appeared through the white curtain of snow, one pair, then another, then more. The rumble became a roar as motorcycles, actual motorcycles in this weather, pulled into her parking lot. Lord have mercy, she breathed, stepping back from the window. Her heart began to race, not from fear exactly, but from the sheer impossibility of what she was seeing. No one rode motorcycles in a Colorado blizzard. It was suicide. The engines cut off one by one, leaving only the wind. Then came the footsteps on the wooden porch, heavy boots stamping off snow. The bell above the door chimed as it opened, and winter itself seemed to walk in. 15 men entered her diner, bringing with them a cloud of snow and diesel exhaust. They were massive, leather-clad figures, their jackets bearing the distinctive winged skull patch of the Iron Vultures Motorcycle Club. Ice clung to their beards, and their faces were raw from the cold. They moved with the careful precision of men who'd pushed themselves to their absolute limit. The leader, a mountain of a man with silver streaking through his long black hair and a scar running from his left eye to his jaw, stepped forward. His boots left puddles on the worn linoleum. When he spoke, his voice was gravelly exhausted. "Ma'am," he said, pulling off his frozen gloves with difficulty. "I'm Jake Morrison. These are my brothers. We got caught in this storm coming back from Denver. Been riding for 3 hours, can't feel our hands or feet anymore. Your light was the only one we've seen for miles. We need—" He paused, swaying slightly. "We need help." Evelyn stood frozen, her mind racing. She knew who the Iron Vultures were. Everyone along this stretch of highway did. They were the kind of men people crossed the street to avoid, the kind whose very presence could empty a room. But looking at them now, she saw something else. She saw exhaustion so profound, it had stripped away all pretense. She saw fingers turning blue from frostbite bodies, shaking uncontrollably from cold. She saw human beings in desperate need. "Sit," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "All of you sit down before you fall down." They didn't need to be told twice. The 15 bikers collapsed into booths and chairs, some literally falling into their seats. One younger member, barely out of his 20s, couldn't stop his teeth from chattering. Another was coughing violently, the harsh sound echoing through the diner. Evelyn moved with purpose, now her earlier despair forgotten. She cranked up the thermostat, hearing the old furnace roar to life. She grabbed every clean towel from the back and began distributing them. "Get those wet jackets off," she ordered, her tone brooking no argument. "You'll never warm up in those." Jake looked at her with surprise. Most people would have been terrified, might have called the police or simply refused to let them in. But this elderly woman was treating them like wayward children who'd stayed out too late in the rain. "Ma'am, we can pay," he started, but she waved him off. "We'll worry about that later. Right now, we need to get you warm before someone loses fingers to frostbite." She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a huge pot that she set on the stove. "Coffee first, then food. When's the last time you ate?" "This morning," one of the bikers admitted. "Maybe earlier." "Lord have mercy," she muttered again, already pulling ingredients from the walk-in cooler. She had maybe enough for a few meals, certainly not enough for 15 hungry men, but she'd make it work somehow. She always had. As she worked, the bikers began to thaw, both literally and figuratively. Color returned to their faces, and with it conversation. They spoke in low voices about the ride, about how the storm had come out of nowhere, about thinking they might actually die out there on the highway. "Thought we were done for when Diesel's bike started cutting out," one said, nodding toward a massive bald man with arms like tree trunks. "100 miles from nowhere, can't see 10 feet, and his engine starts dying." "Made it, though," Diesel said simply, wrapping his hands around the mug of coffee Evelyn had placed before him. "Thanks to whoever's watching over idiots like us." Evelyn moved between them, refilling cups, bringing out what food she could manage. She'd found some frozen burger patties, a few cans of soup, half a loaf of bread. It wasn't much, but she made it stretch the way she'd learned to make everything stretch these past months. Hamburger soup, she called it, though it was really just whatever she could throw together. Jake watched her work, noticed the slight limp she tried to hide the way she winced when reaching for high shelves, but also the efficiency of her movements, the practiced grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime taking care of others. "You run this place alone?" he asked when she brought him his bowl. "These days, yes," she replied, not elaborating. "It's a nice place," he said, looking around at the vintage decor, the black and white photographs of the highway from decades past, the carefully maintained booths. "Feels like home." "It was," Evelyn said quietly, then caught herself. "It is." As the bikers ate, Evelyn found herself studying them. Without their jackets and just flannels and t-shirts, they looked less intimidating. She noticed details: a wedding ring on one, a military tattoo on another, a photograph tucked into a wallet that fell open on the table showing a little girl in a princess dress. "That your daughter?" she asked the man with the wallet. His face lit up. "Yeah, that's my Sarah. She's 6. Probably wondering where Daddy is right about now." "The storm will pass," Evelyn assured him. "You'll be home tomorrow." "Hope so." Promised her I'd be there for her school play. She's playing a flower. He smiled, and years seemed to fall away from his weathered face. "A very important flower, she tells me." The conversation opened a floodgate. Soon the bikers were talking about their families, their jobs. Many were contractors, mechanics, even one accountant. They were fathers, husbands, sons. The patches on their jackets might have marked them as outlaws, but their words revealed them as something far more complex. Evelyn found herself relaxing, even enjoying their company. It had been so long since the diner had felt alive like this. She brought out the pie apple, 2 days old, but still decent if you warmed it up and added some vanilla ice cream she'd been saving. "Ma'am, you don't have to," Jake started. "It's Evelyn," she interrupted. "And yes, I do. Can't send you back out into that storm on just soup." As she served the pie, one of the bikers, a thin man with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, was studying the photographs on the wall. He stopped at one in particular, a ribbon-cutting ceremony from 1992. "Is this you?" he asked, pointing to a much younger Evelyn standing next to a handsome man in a white apron. "That's me and my Tom," she said, a smile touching her lips. "Day we opened this place. Took every penny we had, plus some we didn't have, but Tom said it was worth it. Said the highway needed a place where people could feel human again." "What happened to Tom?" the biker asked gently. "Cancer, 5 years ago." She said it simply, the way you state any fact you've had to accept. "He fought hard, but some fights you don't win." "I'm sorry," Jake said, and she could tell he meant it. "We had 40 good years," Evelyn replied. 40 years of feeding travelers, of being part of people's journeys. That's more than most get." She didn't mention that those 40 years were about to end in 7 days. Didn't mention the foreclosure notice hidden behind the coffee maker. These men had their own troubles. They didn't need hers. As the night wore on, the storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it grew stronger, the wind howling like all the demons of winter had been unleashed at once. The lights flickered more frequently, and Evelyn worried about losing power. "There's a motel about 20 miles up," she said, around 11. "But I don't think we're not riding in this," Jake said firmly. "We'd die trying. If you don't mind, ma'am Evelyn, we'll wait it out here. We can pay for the trouble." Evelyn looked at the 15 bikers crowded into her small diner. They'd have to sleep in the booths on the floor. It would be uncomfortable, probably miserable, but sending them back out would be murder. "You can stay," she said. There are some blankets in the storage room. It won't be comfortable, but it'll be warm. The relief on their faces was palpable. Diesel actually smiled, transforming his intimidating features into something almost gentle. "You're an angel, lady. Just someone who knows what it's like to need shelter from a storm," she replied. As they settled in for the night, arranging themselves as comfortably as possible in the small space, Jake approached Evelyn where she stood behind the counter, finally allowing exhaustion to show on her face. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Most people would have turned us away. We're not exactly the kind of customers places like this usually welcome." Evelyn was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "My Tom used to say that everyone deserves a chance to be more than what they seem. That sometimes the people who look the scariest are the ones who need kindness the most." She paused, then added, "Besides, what kind of person would I be if I turned away 15 men from a storm that would kill them?" Jake studied her for a long moment. "There's more to it than that." She met his gaze steadily. "Maybe. Or maybe I just remember what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn." Before Jake could respond, one of the younger bikers called out, "Hey boss, come look at this." Jake walked over to where the young Mofton was pointing at another photograph on the wall. This one was more recent, maybe 2 years old, showing Evelyn standing with a group of truckers in front of the diner. "That's Big Mike," the biker said, pointing to one of the truckers. "Remember him? Had that heart attack on the highway 3 years ago?" Jake looked closer. "Yeah, I remember. Someone saved his life, got him to the hospital just in time. He never said who." They both turned to look at Evelyn, who had busied herself wiping down the already clean counter. "Ma'am," Jake said slowly, "were you the one who helped Big Mike?" Evelyn shrugged. "Lots of truckers come through here." But now other bikers were looking at the photographs, recognizing faces, remembering stories. "Holy shit," one exclaimed, then quickly apologized for his language. "Sorry, ma'am, but this is Tommy Riverside." He pointed to a young man in one photo. "He was stranded out of here 2 winters ago, no money, no food. Someone helped him get back on his feet. Was that you?" Evelyn remained silent, but her silence was answer enough. The bikers exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning. They'd heard stories over the years, tales of travelers helped by a mysterious Good Samaritan on Highway 70, someone who appeared when people were at their lowest, offering food shelter, sometimes even money for gas or repairs. The stories had become legend among the highway community, but no one had ever put a face or name to the guardian angel, until now. "It's you," Diesel said, his voice full of wonder. "You're the angel of Highway 70. "That's just trucker talk," Evelyn protested, but her cheeks had reddened. "No," Jake said firmly. "It's not. I've heard these stories for 15 years. Travelers in trouble, families, stranded folks at the end of their rope, and someone always helped them. It was you. All this time it was you." The diner fell silent, except for the storm outside. 15 hard men who'd seen and done things that would terrify most people looked at this elderly woman with something approaching awe. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" one asked. "Take credit." "Credit for what? For being a decent human being?" Evelyn shook her head. "That's not something you take credit for. That's just something you do." Jake pulled out his phone, frowning at the screen. "No signal. Storm must have knocked out the towers." "Landline still works if you need to call someone," Evelyn offered, pointing to the old rotary phone on the wall. "Maybe in the morning," Jake said, but something in his expression had changed, become determined. "Evelyn, can I ask you something? This place, is it doing okay?" Financially, I mean, she stiffened. We manage. That's not what I asked. She looked at him, at all of them, watching her with concern, and suddenly felt tears threatening. She hadn't cried in months, had trained herself not to, but something about their genuine concern threatened to break through her carefully constructed walls. No, she admitted quietly. No, it's not okay. The bank is foreclosing. I have 7 days before they take everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Diesel slammed his massive fist on the table, making everyone jump. That's bullshit. Pardon my language, ma'am, but that's complete bullshit. It's business, Evelyn said tiredly. The new truck stop took most of my customers. I can't compete with corporate prices and shiny new everything. It's just the way of things. How much? Jake asked quietly. What? How much to stop the foreclosure? More than I'll see in 3 lifetimes. $30,000. She laughed bitterly. Might as well be 30 million for all the chance I have of getting it. Jake stood abruptly and walked to the old phone. He dialed a number from memory, waited, then spoke in low, urgent tones. Evelyn couldn't make out the words, but she could see the intensity in his posture, the way he gestured as he spoke. When he hung up, he turned to face his brothers. Church, he said simply, and they all stood moving to the far corner of the diner. They spoke in hushed voices, occasionally glancing at Evelyn, who pretended to be absorbed in cleaning the coffee maker. After 15 minutes, they broke apart. Jake approached her again. Evelyn, we need to ask you something, and we need you to be completely honest. Okay, she said uncertainly. In the past 15 years, how many people would you say you've silently helped, not just served coffee to, but actually made a difference for? She thought about it. I don't know. I don't keep count. Hundreds. Maybe. Probably. I don't know. Jake nodded as if this confirmed something. And you never asked for anything in return? Of course not. You don't help people because you want something back. Most people do, Diesel said. Most people don't help at all. Jake returned to the phone, made another call, then another. Soon he was calling out names and numbers to his brothers who used their own phones when they could get brief signal windows. The activity continued for an hour, calls being made, voices urgent and excited. Evelyn watched in bewilderment. What are you doing? Setting something right, Jake said simply. Now you should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. I don't understand. You will. Trust me, Evelyn. You will. She wanted to protest, to demand answers, but exhaustion was finally claiming her. The stress of the day, the emotional weight of what she thought would be her last week in the diner, and the strange turn the night had taken, all combined to drain her completely. There's a cot in the back office, she said. I'll sleep there. You sure it's your place? We can make do out here. You already are making do. Besides, I've slept on that cot plenty of nights when Tom was sick, and I couldn't bear to leave the diner unattended. One more won't hurt. As she gathered a blanket and headed to the small office behind the kitchen, Jake called out, Evelyn. She turned. Thank you. For everything. For tonight, but also for everything else. All the people you've helped, whether they knew it was you or not, thank you. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and retreated to the office. But sleep wouldn't come. Through the thin door, she could hear the bikers talking, making more phone calls whenever someone got a signal. She heard phrases like, remember that time, and she's the one who, and we owe her. She heard mention of names she recognized, people she'd helped over the years, though she'd never imagined anyone had connected her to those acts of kindness. Around 3 a.m, she heard vehicles outside, many vehicles, judging by the sound. She sat up alarmed, but Jake's voice calmed the others. They made it. I didn't think they'd get through, but they made it. She wanted to go look to see what was happening, but something told her to wait. This was their moment, whatever they were planning. She'd know soon enough. As dawn approached, the storm finally began to weaken. The wind still howled, but with less fury, and the snow had changed from a horizontal assault to gentle falling flakes. Evelyn emerged from the office to find the diner transformed. It wasn't just the 15 bikers anymore. The place was packed with people, truckers, bikers, families, people she recognized, and many she didn't. They filled every booth, every chair, and many were standing. The parking lot she could see through the window was full of trucks, cars, and more motorcycles. "What?" she started, but couldn't finish. Jake stood, and the room fell silent. "Evelyn Carter," he said formally. "For 15 years you've been the guardian angel of Highway 70. You've helped hundreds of us when we were at our lowest, never asking for anything in return, never even taking credit. You saved Big Mike's life when he had his heart attack. You gave Tommy Riverside a job and a place to stay when he had nowhere else to go. You paid for Maria's tow when she was stranded with her kids. You've been the light in the darkness for so many of us." A woman Evelyn vaguely recognized stood up. "You gave me formula and diapers when I had no money, and a hungry baby. I've never forgotten." A trucker stood next. "You lent me $500 for fuel when my card got declined, and I was going to lose my job if I didn't deliver on time. You wouldn't even let me pay you back with interest." One by one, people stood and shared their stories. Each one was a testament to a moment when Evelyn had chosen compassion over common sense generosity, over self-preservation. Some stories she remembered clearly. Others had blurred together in the years of giving. "We heard you're in trouble," Jake continued when the last story had been told. "We heard the bank is trying to take this place, our place, really, because you made it ours every time you helped one of us. Well, we're not going to let that happen." Diesel stepped forward with a cardboard box. "We've been collecting all night, making calls, reaching out to everyone who owes you a debt of kindness. This is just from the people who could make it here or who we could reach by phone." He set the box on the counter and opened it. It was full of money bills of every denomination, checks, even IOUs with promises to pay. "We're not done," Jake said. The word's still spreading. "But right now, today, we have $43,000 in that box. The foreclosure is done. The Midnight Haven stays open." Evelyn's knees buckled. Someone caught her, guided her to a chair. She was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Years of stress, of fear, of holding everything together alone came pouring out. I can't take this," she managed between sobs. "You're not taking anything," Jake said firmly. "We're paying a debt. Hell, we're not even close to paying what we really owe you, but it's a start. But some of you don't even know me. Some of you I've never seen before." A young woman with a baby on her hip spoke up. "Maybe you haven't seen me, but I've heard about you. Every trucker, every biker, everyone who travels this highway knows about the angel who helps people. Even if you never helped me personally, you helped my friends, my family of the road. We take care of our own, and you've been taking care of us for years. Now it's our turn." The sun broke through the clouds, then sending golden light streaming through the windows. The storm was over, leaving behind a world transformed by white. But inside the Midnight Haven, something else had been transformed. "There's more," Jake said. "The Iron Vultures are making this diner an official stop on all our runs. We're also spreading the word to every motorcycle club from here to California. The truckers are doing the same with their networks. The Midnight Haven is going to be the most famous diner on Highway 70. We're also setting up a fund," added the accountant biker. "The Midnight Haven Foundation. Anyone who's ever been helped on this highway can contribute, and it'll be here for you if you ever need it again. Evelyn looked around the room at all these faces, rough, weathered kind, and felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Not alone. Tom had always said the diner was about more than food. It was about connection, community, hope. She'd kept his dream alive without realizing she'd built something even bigger, a family of the road bound, not by blood, but by the simple recognition that everyone needs help sometimes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll keep the lights on," Jake replied. "Say you'll keep being here for the next traveler who needs shelter from a storm." Evelyn stood wiping her eyes and looked around the room. "The coffee's free today," she announced, her voice growing stronger. "And everyone gets breakfast. It's the least I can do." A cheer went up, and suddenly the diner was alive with conversation, laughter, the clink of cups and plates. Evelyn moved through it all in a daze, taking orders, pouring coffee, accepting hugs from people whose faces she was only now connecting to stories from years past. As she worked, she heard Jake on the phone again. "Yeah, we need the whole story out there. Every news outlet, every social media platform. The Midnight Haven Diner, Highway 70, Colorado. Make sure everyone knows this place is protected." By noon, the first news van had arrived, followed by 3 more. The story of the elderly woman who'd helped hundreds and the bikers who'd returned to save her diner was apparently the kind of human interest piece everyone wanted. But Evelyn barely noticed the cameras. She was too busy doing what she'd always done, taking care of people who needed it. The diner was fuller than it had been in years, maybe ever. People kept arriving, drawn by word of mouth, by social media posts that were already going viral, by the simple desire to be part of something good. As the sun set on that extraordinary day, painting the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold, Evelyn stood in her doorway, watching the last of the day's visitors depart. The parking lot was still half full. Some of the bikers had decided to stay another night, wanting to make sure she was really okay. Jake stood beside her. "You know this is just the beginning, right? This place is going to be legendary." "It already was," Evelyn said softly. "I just didn't know anyone had noticed." "We noticed. We all noticed. And now everyone's going to know about the angel of Highway 70 and her Midnight Haven." Evelyn smiled, thinking of Tom, of how proud he would be to see this. The diner he'd built with his hands had become something he'd built with his heart, a place of refuge, of hope, of human connection. "Thank you," she said to Jake. "Thank you for saving my diner." "No, Evelyn," Jake replied, putting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for saving us first. Every single one of us in one way or another. This was just us returning the favor." As the stars emerged in the clear Colorado sky, the neon sign of the Midnight Haven Diner blazed against the darkness, a beacon for travelers, just as it had always been. But now it meant something more. It was proof that kindness comes back, that no good deed is ever truly forgotten, that sometimes when you need it most, the very people you once helped will roar out of a storm to save you. The foreclosure notice still sat behind the coffee maker, but now it was just paper, powerless against the force of community that had rallied around this small diner. Evelyn picked it up, looked at it one last time, then fed it into the wood stove in the corner, watching it curl and blacken and disappear. The Midnight Haven would survive. More than survive, it would thrive, becoming exactly what Tom had always dreamed it could be. A place where humanity showed its best face, where strangers became family, where a simple act of kindness to 15 cold bikers in a storm would become a legend that would echo down Highway 70 for generations to come. The wood stove crackled as the foreclosure notice turned to ash, and Evelyn stood there for a moment longer, watching the last ember fade. Jake had returned to his brothers, who were settling in for another night. Their voices a low rumble of contentment that filled the diner with warmth beyond what any furnace could provide. "Evelyn," called out Marcus the biker, with the wire-rimmed glasses, who'd first recognized her in the photographs. "You should see this." She walked over to where he was hunched over his phone, squinting at the screen. The video he showed her was shaky, clearly filmed by someone in the diner just hours ago. She watched herself serving coffee, unaware of being recorded, while Jake's voice explained what was happening. The caption read, "Bikers save Angel grandmother's diner after she sheltered them from deadly blizzard." "It's got 3 million views already," Marcus said, his voice tinged with amazement. "And climbing fast. Look at the comments." Evelyn leaned in though she needed her reading glasses to make out the small text. People from around the world were responding, offering donations, sharing their own stories of roadside kindness, planning trips to visit the Midnight Haven. "I don't understand," she murmured. "Why do all these strangers care?" Diesel, who'd been listening from a nearby booth, laughed a sound like gravel in a tumbler. "Because, ma'am, in a world full of bad news, you're the reminder that good people still exist. That small places still matter. That taking care of each other isn't just something from old movies." The phone in the kitchen began ringing. It had been ringing intermittently all day, but now it seemed constant. Evelyn moved to answer it, but Jake intercepted her. "Let me," he said. "You've done enough today." As Jake fielded what sounded like another media request, Evelyn noticed a young biker she hadn't really spoken to yet sitting alone in the corner booth. He couldn't have been more than 22 with haunted eyes that seemed decades older. She poured a fresh cup of coffee and approached him. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. He looked up, startled. "It's your place, ma'am." "That's not what I asked." She slid into the booth across from him. "You've been quiet all day. Even last night when everyone was sharing stories, you held back." The young man, his patch-red ghost, stared into his coffee. "Didn't have a story to share. You never helped me." "Then why are you here?" Ghost was quiet for so long, Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper, "Because you helped my mom 7 years ago, though she never knew it was you." Evelyn waited, having learned long ago that silence could be more encouraging than questions. She was driving through, heading to Denver for cancer treatment. Beat-up old Honda barely running. She stopped here for coffee, counting change to pay for it. "You saw her crying in the parking lot afterward." Ghost's voice caught. Her credit card had been declined. She couldn't afford gas to get to her appointment. The memory surfaced slowly in Evelyn's mind. A thin woman with a brave smile and a wig that didn't quite hide her baldness. "I remember." She had a picture on her dashboard. A young boy in a baseball uniform. "That was me." Ghost looked up, tears streaming down his face. "You filled her tank, gave her money for food and a motel, made her promise to come back and let you know how treatment went." "She never came back," Evelyn said softly. "She wanted to. God, she wanted to. She talked about you all the time, about finding the angel lady at the diner and paying her back. But the cancer..." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "She died 3 months later. But those 3 months, the treatment she got because of your help, gave us time. Time to say goodbye. Time for her to see me graduate high school. Time that we wouldn't have had." Evelyn reached across the table and took his hands. They were shaking. "She made me promise," Ghost continued. "If I ever found you, I had to thank you. Had to tell you that you didn't just give her gas money. You gave her hope when she had none left. You gave us our last good days together." "What was her name?" Evelyn asked. Linda Patterson." Linda, Evelyn repeated as if tasting the name. She had beautiful eyes. Even sick, even scared, they were so bright. Yeah, Ghost whispered. They were. They sat in silence for a moment. Two people connected by a woman who was gone but whose memory lived on in acts of kindness, rippling outward like stones thrown in still water. The bell above the door chimed and a man in an expensive suit entered, looking conspicuously out of place among the bikers and truckers. He carried a briefcase and had the sharp, predatory look of someone who dealt in other people's misfortunes. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Evelyn. "Yes. My name is Richard Brennan. I represent First National Bank." He pulled out a document. "I'm here about your loan." The diner went silent. Several bikers stood up, their intentions clear, but Evelyn raised a hand. "It's all right. Mr. Brennan, I believe you're a day late and about $43,000 short." Brennan's smile was thin. "Actually, Mrs. Carter, I'm here because the bank has received numerous calls today. Apparently your situation has attracted significant media attention. The president of the bank himself asked me to come here." "To gloat," Diesel growled. "No," Brennan said, surprising everyone. "To apologize, and to make an offer." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a different set of papers. "The bank would like to forgive the remaining balance of your loan effective immediately. In exchange, we'd like to sponsor the Midnight Haven Diner as part of our community investment program. It would mean some publicity for the bank, of course, but also a monthly stipend to help with operations." Evelyn stared at him. "Why would you do that?" Brennan's professional mask slipped slightly. "Because the CEO's mother saw the video. She called him crying, said if the bank foreclosed on you after what she saw, she'd never speak to him again. Also," he paused, loosening his tie, "20 years ago, I was a junior banker driving to Denver for a job interview. My car broke down right outside. I had no money for repairs, and missing that interview would have meant staying in a dead-end job forever." Recognition dawned on Evelyn's face. "You were wearing your father's suit. It was too big for you. You noticed, I notice everything about people who need help." She smiled. "You got the job, I take it." "I did. Built my whole career from that opportunity. An opportunity I only got because someone I'd never met paid for my alternator and wouldn't let me pay her back." He pushed the papers across the table. "The bank's offer is real, Mrs. Carter. No tricks, no fine print. It's the least we can do." Jake stepped forward. "We appreciate the gesture, but Evelyn doesn't need your money anymore. We've got her covered." "I understand," Brennan said, "but this isn't charity. This is the bank acknowledging that the Midnight Haven Diner is a community asset worth preserving. The stipend would ensure it never faces foreclosure again." Evelyn looked around the room at all the faces watching her, bikers, truckers, locals, who'd come to see what the fuss was about. These people had already given so much. If the bank wanted to ease her future burdens, who was she to let pride stand in the way? "I'll look at the papers," she said, "but no promises." Brennan nodded, left his card, and departed as quickly as he'd come. The moment the door closed behind him, the diner erupted in conversation. "Corporate vultures," someone muttered. "Even vultures know when they're outnumbered," Jake replied, getting a laugh from the room. As evening approached, more people continued to arrive. The small parking lot overflowed onto the highway shoulder. Someone had set up a food truck outside to help feed the crowd. A local band had brought acoustic guitars and set up in the corner, filling the diner with music for the first time since Tom's wake. Evelyn moved through it all like a woman in a dream. Every time she tried to process what was happening, someone else would approach with another story, another memory of kindness received, or witnessed. A young couple showed her their baby named Eva in her honor, after she'd helped them when they were stranded and pregnant 2 years ago. A veteran showed her a sobriety chip, crediting her with saving his life when she'd talked him out of suicide one dark night 3 years past. "I don't remember all of these," she confided to Jake during a quiet moment. "Some of them, yes, but others, they've all blurred together." "That's because you weren't keeping score," Jake replied. "You helped because it needed doing, not for recognition or repayment. That's what makes this real." Around 9 o'clock, a convoy of motorcycles arrived. Not iron vultures, but members of different clubs from across the state. They'd heard the call and come to pay respects to the woman who'd helped so many of their brothers and sisters over the years. Each club president formally introduced themselves to Evelyn, pledging support for the diner. "The road can be a hard place," said a woman, whose patch identified her as president of the Sisters of Steel. "Places like this, people like you, make it bearable, make it human." As the evening wore on, Evelyn found herself standing outside, needing air and quiet. The snow had stopped completely, leaving the world crystalline and still. Stars blazed overhead with the clarity that only comes after a storm. Marcus joined her, lighting a cigarette. "Mind if I smoke?" "Tom smoked," she said. "Same brand, actually. Marlboro Reds." "Smart man." Marcus took a drag, exhaled slowly. "Can I tell you something, Evelyn, about Jake?" She nodded. 15 years ago, Jake's daughter went missing. 16 years old, ran away with some guy who promised her the world. Jake searched for 2 years, nearly destroyed himself and the club in the process. Then one day, he gets a call. Some diner owner on Highway 70 found a girl strung out and half dead in their parking lot. Got her to a hospital, stayed with her for 3 days until she was stable enough to call home. Evelyn's breath caught. Sarah Morrison. I remember her. Tough kid, but lost. That was Jake's daughter. You saved her life. She's a nurse now, married with kids of her own. Jake never knew who saved her. Sarah was too out of it to remember details, and the hospital lost the paperwork. He's been looking for that guardian angel ever since. Why didn't he say anything? Because he's Jake. He processes things internally. But when he realized it was you, when all the pieces clicked into place today, it's like watching a man find religion. You didn't just save his daughter Evelyn. You saved him. A father who gets his child back becomes a different man. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their breath cloud in the cold air. Inside, someone had started singing an old Johnny Cash song about redemption and roads traveled. Other voices joined in, creating an impromptu choir of rough voices finding harmony. "It's strange," Evelyn said. "I spent 5 years thinking I was alone, that Tom's death had left me isolated. But all this time I was building something without knowing it. A network of people connected by nothing more than moments of kindness." "That's how the best families are made," Marcus replied. "Not by blood, but by choice. By people deciding to give a damn about each other." A pickup truck pulled into the lot, somehow finding space despite the crowd. A familiar figure emerged, Dr. Patricia Hendricks from the county hospital. She rushed toward Evelyn, her face bright with excitement. "Patricia, what are you doing here at this hour?" "I had to come as soon as my shift ended." "Evelyn, do you have any idea what you've started?" "I haven't started anything." The hospital has received over $200,000 in donations since this afternoon, all marked for the Evelyn Carter Free Care Fund. People from around the world are donating, saying they want to support the medical care of travelers in need, just like you've been doing with food and shelter. Evelyn had to lean against the wall. 200,000. And climbing. We're going to be able to help so many people, Evelyn. People without insurance, people passing through who get sick or injured. It's going to change everything. Jake appeared in the doorway. There's more. Someone from the governor's office is on the phone. They want to declare the Midnight Haven a state historic landmark. Permanent protection from development or demolition. This is insane, Evelyn breathed. This is karma, Jake corrected. 15 years of good deeds coming home to roost. As midnight approached, 24 hours since the iron vultures had first stumbled through her door, Evelyn found herself back inside, surrounded by more people than the diner had ever held. Someone had brought in extra chairs from the church down the road. Children were asleep in their parents' arms. Bikers sat next to businessmen, truckers next to teenagers, all united by the strange magnetism of the moment. Jake called for quiet, and the room slowly settled. Before we call it a night, he said, there's something that needs to be said. Evelyn, you've spent years taking care of everyone else. Your husband would be proud of what you've built here, but I think he'd want to know you were taken care of too. You've all done more than enough. We've started a tradition, Jake interrupted. Every full moon riders from across the state will converge on the Midnight Haven. We'll fill this place, buy everything you're selling, and make sure you never have another quiet night if you don't want one. The truckers have organized something similar for the new moon. Between the bikers and the truckers, you'll have guaranteed business twice a month minimum. But more than that, the Sisters of Steel president added, you've got family now. Real family. Any problem you have, any burden you're carrying, you don't carry it alone anymore. That's not a gift, Evelyn. That's a promise. The room erupted in agreement, applause, cheers, boots stamping on the floor. Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they weren't tears of sorrow or fear. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude, of recognition that sometimes the universe pays attention, that sometimes good deeds create ripples that become waves, that become tsunamis of human kindness. As people began to filter out, making plans to return, exchanging numbers, creating bonds that would last lifetimes, Ghost approached Evelyn one more time. My mom would have loved this, Mo, he said simply, knowing that her story was part of something bigger. She is part of it, Evelyn assured him. Every person who's ever given or received kindness here is part of it. This diner isn't just a building. It's all of us. By 2 a.m, only the original 15 iron vultures remained, along with a few truckers who'd decided to sleep in their cabs in the parking lot, standing guard over the woman who'd guarded so many others. Jake and his brothers were sprawled across the booths again, but this time the atmosphere was different. Instead of desperate exhaustion, there was contentment, purpose, the satisfaction of a debt repaid. You know, Diesel said, his massive frame somehow folded into a booth designed for much smaller people. I've done a lot of things in my life. Some good, some not so good. But this being part of this feels like what I was supposed to do. The universe has a way of putting us where we need to be, Evelyn said, refilling his coffee one more time. You needed shelter from a storm. I needed saving from a different kind of storm. Somehow we found each other. Tom would have loved this, Marcus observed, gesturing at the controlled chaos of the diner. He would have, Evelyn agreed. He always said the diner would outlive us both, that it would become something bigger than we ever imagined. I thought he was just dreaming, but Tom always saw further than me. He saw the potential in everything, everyone. Including you, Jake said quietly. Especially me. When we met, I was just a waitress in a truck stop, no family, no prospects. Tom saw something more. Convinced me we could build something special together. She looked around the diner at the photos on the walls, the worn but clean surfaces, the people who'd become family. I guess we did. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Evelyn stood in her diner surrounded by sleeping bikers who'd become her guardians, and realized that the last $47 in her bank account was now irrelevant. Not because of the money that had been raised, not because of the bank's offer, or the government protection, or the promised future business. It was irrelevant because she understood now what Tom had always known: wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in connections, in the lives touched, and the kindness shared. The Midnight Haven had never been poor. It had always been rich in the only currency that truly mattered. The sun rose over Highway 70, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. But the real transformation had happened inside the small diner, where 15 cold bikers seeking shelter had become the catalyst for something extraordinary. Word continued to spread through the morning. The video had reached 10 million views. News crews from Denver, Salt Lake City, even Los Angeles were on their way. The governor himself had announced he would visit next week. The Midnight Haven, after decades of quiet service, had become the most famous diner in America. But Evelyn wasn't thinking about fame as she started a fresh pot of coffee. She was thinking about Linda Patterson, and her bright eyes about Joke's daughter Sarah, and second chances about Big Mike and Tommy Riverside, and Maria with her babies, about every soul who'd passed through these doors, carrying burdens too heavy to bear alone. She was thinking about Tom, who'd built more than a diner. He'd built a lighthouse for lost travelers, a church for the unchurched, a home for the homeless. He'd built it with wood and nails and sweat. But more importantly, he'd built it with love and the radical belief that everyone deserved dignity, respect, and a hot cup of coffee when the world turned cold. "You did it, Tom," she whispered to the photo of him hanging behind the register, the one where he was grinning in his flower-covered apron, proud as a new father the day they'd opened. "You built something that will outlive us all." Jake, stirred in his booth, sat up and met her eyes. "Morning, Evelyn? Coffee ready?" "Always," she said, and meant it. The coffee would always be ready at the Midnight Haven. The lights would always be on. The door would always open for anyone who needed shelter from whatever storm they were facing. Because that's what angels do. They don't announce themselves with trumpets and glory. They pour coffee, flip burgers, and quietly save lives, one act of kindness at a time. And sometimes when they need it most, all that kindness comes roaring back on motorcycles through a blizzard, proving that love given freely is never lost. It just circles back when you need it most, multiplied beyond measure. The Midnight Haven Diner was saved. But more than that, it had become what it was always meant to be, a testament to the power of human kindness, a monument to the belief that we are all connected, all responsible for each other, all capable of being someone's angel when they need one most. The coffee had barely finished brewing when the first news van pulled into the parking lot, its satellite dish scraping against the low-hanging branches of the pine trees that bordered the property. Jake watched through the window as a reporter and cameraman struggled through the snow, their city shoes wholly inadequate for Colorado's aftermath. "They're early," he muttered, checking his watch. 6:30 in the morning. "They're ambitious," Evelyn corrected, already reaching for clean mugs. "And probably cold. Should I let them in?" "Your diner, your rules," Jake said, but his tone suggested wariness. Evelyn opened the door before they could knock. The reporter, a young woman with perfectly styled hair already wilting in the morning humidity, looked surprised. "We're not actually open yet," Evelyn said gently, "but you look like you could use some coffee." "Thank you," the reporter breathed, gratitude replacing her practiced professionalism. "I'm Jennifer Liu from Channel 9. We drove through the night to get here. The roads were—" She trailed off, shuddering. "Terrible," her cameraman finished. I'm Doug. Is it true about the bikers and the storm? Coffee first, Evelyn said firmly. Stories second. As they warmed up, more of the iron vultures began stirring. Diesel stretched his joints, popping audibly, while Marcus cleaned his glasses on his shirt. Ghost hadn't slept at all, Evelyn noticed. He'd spent the night sitting by the window watching the snow, as if it might reveal secrets. Jennifer Lou pulled out her phone, scrolling through notes. Mrs. Carter, your story has gone viral globally. The Today Show wants a live interview. CNN is sending a crew. The president tweeted about you this morning. The president. Evelyn nearly dropped the coffee pot. Doug showed her his phone. The tweet was simple but powerful. Evelyn Carter reminds us what America is truly about, neighbors helping neighbors, kindness without conditions. The Midnight Haven Diner is a national treasure. National treasure, Diesel repeated, grinning. Hear that, boys? We're hanging out in a national treasure. You helped make it one, Evelyn reminded him, but her hands were shaking slightly. The attention felt overwhelming, like standing in a spotlight when she'd spent her life comfortable in the shadows. Jake noticed her discomfort. Evelyn doesn't do interviews before 7, he announced. House rules. You can wait, or you can come back. Jennifer started to protest, but Doug touched her arm. We'll wait, he said. This coffee's worth waiting for anyway. As the sun climbed higher, more vehicles arrived. The parking lot became a maze of news vans, motorcycles, and cars with license plates from neighboring states. Someone had erected a tent in the field next door, and the smell of grilling food began competing with Evelyn's coffee. It's like a festival, Marcus observed, watching through the window. It's like a circus, Jake corrected, his tone darker. Evelyn, you don't have to talk to any of them. Say the word and we'll clear them out. But Evelyn was watching something else, a battered station wagon pulling up, unable to find parking, finally stopping on the shoulder. A young family emerged, parents and 3 children looking overwhelmed by the crowd. I'll be right back, she said, heading for the door. She intercepted the family before they could be swallowed by the chaos. The father was Hispanic, mid-30s, with the calloused hands of a construction worker. The mother held a baby while 2 young boys clung to her coat. Can I help you? Evelyn asked. The man looked embarrassed. We saw the news. We drove from Pueblo. I needed to thank you. I don't understand. 3 years ago, Christmas Eve, our car broke down right here. No money for repairs, no way to get home. You not only paid for the parts, but convinced Eddie, the mechanic down the road, to fix it for free. You gave us Christmas dinner and your diner presents for the boys that you said someone had left behind, but I knew you'd bought them yourself. The memory surfaced slowly. The alternator, Evelyn said. And little Miguel had been crying because Santa wouldn't know where to find them. That's right, the mother said, tears in her eyes. You saved our Christmas. Saved our family, really. Roberto had just gotten a new job and missing his first day back would have... She trailed off. But you never came back, Evelyn said. I wondered what happened to you. We wanted to, Roberto said. But we were ashamed. We couldn't pay you back and coming empty-handed felt wrong. But when we saw the news, we knew we had to come. To at least say thank you. Miguel, the mother urged, and the older boy, now about 8, stepped forward shyly. He handed Evelyn a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing the diner decorated for Christmas, with an angel on the roof. My teacher said to draw our favorite Christmas memory, Miguel explained. I drew the night the angel lady saved Christmas. Evelyn knelt down her knees, protesting, and hugged the boy. This is beautiful. Can I keep it? He nodded solemnly. I made it for you. Roberto works construction now, the mother said. Good job, union wages. We bought a house last year. None of it would have happened without that night. We brought something, Roberto said, reaching into the car and pulling out an envelope. It's not much, just $500, but… No, Evelyn said firmly. You keep that. Use it for the children. Please, Roberto insisted. Let us give back. Let us be part of this. He gestured at the crowd, the gathering that had become something between a celebration and a pilgrimage. Evelyn accepted the envelope, understanding that sometimes receiving was as important as giving. Would you like breakfast, all of you? We couldn't impose. It's not imposing. It's what we do here. As she led them through the crowd, Jennifer Liu appeared with her microphone. Mrs. Carter, could we get a quick… After I take care of my guests, Evelyn said firmly. These people drove from Pueblo. They come first. Inside, the diner had transformed into something resembling a command center. Someone had brought in a laptop and was managing social media accounts that had been created overnight. The donation box from yesterday had been replaced with 3 more, all overflowing. A lawyer Jake knew had arrived to help Evelyn navigate the sudden influx of offers and obligations. The bank sent over the paperwork. The lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Catherine, informed her. It's legitimate. Full loan forgiveness plus a monthly stipend of $5,000 for community service. No strings I can find. $5,000 a month? Evelyn sank into a chair. That's more than I usually made in 3 months. There's more, Catherine continued. A tech billionaire in Silicon Valley wants to create a documentary about you. He's offering $200,000 for the rights to your story. My story isn't for sale, Evelyn said immediately. I told him you'd say that. He said the money would go directly to a charity of your choice and you'd have full creative control. Ghost, who'd been listening, spoke up. You should do it. Not for the money, but so the story gets told right. So people understand it wasn't just about one night in a storm. Before Evelyn could respond, a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. A convoy of pickup trucks had arrived, all bearing the logo of a local construction company. Roberto's face lit up. That's my boss, he said, rushing to the window. That's Mr. Davidson's truck. A man in his 60s emerged from the lead truck, followed by what looked like an entire construction crew. He entered the diner, removed his hard hat, and approached Evelyn. Mrs. Carter, I'm Bill Davidson. I own Davidson Construction. Roberto Martinez has worked for me for 3 years, and just this morning, he told me the story of how you saved his family, how that led to him being able to work for me. He paused, his weathered face emotional. Roberto is one of my best workers, but more than that, he's a good man, a good father. Because of what you did, he got the chance to prove that. I just helped with a car repair, Evelyn said, uncomfortable with the praise. You did more than that. You kept a family together, kept a man's dignity intact. Do you know how rare that is? Davidson gestured to his crew. Every one of these men has a story about this diner. Maybe not as dramatic as Roberto's, but stories nonetheless. Hot coffee on credit when they were broke. A meal they could pay for next payday that sometimes you forgot to collect. A place where construction workers were treated with the same respect as anyone else. He pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. We took up a collection. It's not much compared to what others are giving, but it comes from men who work with their hands, who understand what this place means. $18,000. The crew erupted in applause, and Evelyn saw that many of them were crying. These were tough men who built buildings and roads, but they were crying over a diner and the woman who ran it. Jake's phone rang. He answered, his face growing serious. Yeah, I understand. We'll handle it. He hung up and approached Evelyn. That was the state police. They're sending units to help with crowd control. This is getting bigger than anyone expected. I just wanted to save my diner, Evelyn said weakly. You did. But you're saving a lot more than that now. As if to emphasize his point, a group of elderly women entered, all wearing purple hats and red dresses. The Red Hat Society Evelyn recognized from the senior center in town. Evelyn, their leader Margaret called out. We've been trying to get here all morning. The traffic is backed up for miles. Miles? Marcus looked out the window. Indeed, the highway was becoming congested, cars slowing to look at the gathering, many pulling over to join it. Margaret bustled over, her energy belying her 80 years. Do you remember when Harold had his stroke 5 years ago? Of course. You were here every morning at 4 a.m., waiting for news from the night shift nurses. And you never charged me for coffee. Not once in 3 months. You'd sit with me when the fear got too bad, hold my hand when I cried. Margaret's voice broke. Harold lived because I was able to be there to notice the second stroke starting and get help in time. You gave me the strength to keep vigiling. You'd have done the same for anyone, Evelyn said. But I didn't. You did. Margaret handed her an envelope. The whole Red Hat Society contributed. It's not much, but it's everything, Evelyn interrupted. It's everything because it comes from you. The morning progressed in a blur of stories and donations. A Vietnam veteran showed her a photo of the meal she'd served him on Veterans Day. 15 years ago, she'd refused his money and thanked him for his service, the first time anyone had done so. A teenage girl introduced Evelyn to her baby born healthy after Evelyn had driven her to the hospital when she went into labor alone and scared at the diner 2 years prior. Each story was a thread in a tapestry Evelyn hadn't known she was weaving. The Midnight Haven hadn't just been serving food. It had been serving hope, dignity, and human connection to people who desperately needed all three. Jennifer Liu finally got her interview, though it wasn't what she expected. Instead of focusing on the viral story of the bikers in the storm, Evelyn insisted on talking about the people who'd come today, about Roberto and his family, about Ghost's mother Linda, about the construction workers and the Red Hat Society. This isn't my story, she told the camera. It's all of our stories. Every person who's ever found shelter here, literal or figurative, is part of this story. But you're the common thread, Jennifer pressed. You're the one who helped all these people. I had a diner and a heart. That's all. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't, Jake interjected from off camera. That's the point, Evelyn. Most people wouldn't have done the same. Most people don't. The interview was interrupted by the arrival of the state police, but also by something unexpected. A motorcycle club none of the Iron Vultures recognized. Their patches identified them as the Desert Wolves from Arizona. Their president, a Native American man with long braided hair, approached Jake with respect but urgency. We need to talk to Mrs. Carter. About what? Jake's protective instincts flared. About my nephew. 10 years ago he ran away from the reservation. 16 years old, angry at the world. He ended up here sick with pneumonia, no money, no hope. Mrs. Carter didn't just nurse him back to health. She called me, convinced him to come home, drove him partway herself to make sure he made it. The Desert Wolf president turned to Evelyn. That boy is a doctor now. He runs a clinic on the reservation. He saves lives every day because you saved his life first. Samuel, Evelyn remembered. Samuel Yazzie. He was so sick, delirious with fever. Keep talking about wolves in the snow. That was his spirit vision. He believes you were sent by the spirits to guide him home. The president pulled out a leather pouch. This is from him, from all of us. Not money, we know you have enough of that now, but something more important. Inside the pouch was a small silver medallion with intricate engravings. This marks you as a friend of the Desert Wolves, of all native riders. Wherever you go, whatever you need, You show this and you'll have help. It's a lifetime promise. The presentation of the medallion seemed to trigger something. Other motorcycle clubs began stepping forward, each offering their own tokens of protection and friendship. The Sisters of Steel, the Road Warriors. The Chrome Knights clubs that rarely acknowledged each other were united in their respect for this elderly woman who'd been quietly taking care of their own for years. You realize what this means, Marcus whispered to Jake. She's got the protection of every major MC in the western United States. She's untouchable. She always was, Jake replied. We just made it official. As noon approached, the crowd had grown so large that the state police had to close a section of Highway 70. The governor's office called to say he was coming early, would arrive within the hour. The national media was calling the gathering the miracle on Highway 70. But in the middle of all this chaos, Evelyn noticed someone she hadn't seen in years, a thin, weathered woman, standing at the edge of the crowd, hesitant to approach. Diane, Evelyn called out, recognizing her estranged daughter. The crowd seemed to part as Diane approached, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I saw the news in Portland. I drove all night. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since a bitter argument after Tom's funeral about selling the diner. Diane had wanted Evelyn to retire, move to Portland, be a traditional grandmother. The fight had been vicious, ending with Diane saying Evelyn cared more about strangers than her own family. I was wrong, Diane said simply. I was so wrong. Watching all these people, hearing their stories. You weren't choosing strangers over family. You were making everyone family. They embraced then Evelyn and her daughter, while hundreds of strangers who'd become family watched and cheered. It was another kind of homecoming, another circle closing. Dad would be so proud, Diane whispered. He'd be overwhelmed, Evelyn corrected, laughing through her tears. He never did like crowds. But he loved people, individual people, their stories, their struggles, just like you. The reunion was interrupted by the governor's arrival earlier than expected. Governor Michael Harrison was younger than Evelyn had expected, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Carter, I'm here to personally deliver this, he said, handing her an official document. The Midnight Haven Diner is now officially a Colorado historic landmark. It can never be demolished or significantly altered without state approval. Additionally, he continued, the state is establishing the Evelyn Carter Good Samaritan Fund with an initial investment of $1 million. It will provide emergency assistance to travelers in need throughout Colorado, administered through locations like yours, places that have proven themselves to be more than businesses, but beacons of hope. The crowd erupted, but Evelyn could barely hear them. $1 million. Historic landmark. It was too much to process. Why? She managed to ask. Because in an age where we're all so divided, you've shown us what we have in common. The need for kindness, the power of compassion. You've reminded us that we're all just travelers on the same road, and sometimes we all need shelter from the storm. Ghost suddenly appeared at her elbow. Mrs. Carter, there's someone else here to see you. She turned to find a young woman in navy dress blues standing at attention. Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, United States Navy. I believe you knew my father. Jake's daughter. The girl Evelyn had found dying in the parking lot 15 years ago. I've been stationed overseas. Sarah continued, her military bearing cracking slightly. Dad called me yesterday, told me everything. I caught the first flight home. She paused, visibly struggling with emotion. I don't remember much from that night. I was so far gone. But I remember your voice telling me I was going to be okay, that I was worth saving. For 3 days you stayed with me. A stranger. A kid who'd thrown her life away. You were never a stranger, Evelyn said softly. You were just someone who needed help. You gave me back my life. More than that, you gave me purpose. I became a nurse because I wanted to save people the way you saved me. I've served in combat zones, saved lives on aircraft carriers, and every single time I heard your voice telling me that everyone is worth saving. Sarah broke military protocol, then pulling Evelyn into a fierce hug. Thank you. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. Jake joined them, and for a moment, the three of them stood together, the biker, the naval officer, and the diner owner, an unlikely family forged in the crucible of one desperate night 15 years ago. The afternoon brought more surprises. A famous chef from Denver arrived offering to help redesign the kitchen for free. A technology company wanted to set up free Wi-Fi and charging stations for travelers. A hotel chain offered to build a motel next door, promising that Evelyn would receive a percentage of all profits. But the most meaningful moment came when a school bus pulled up full of children from the local elementary school. They filed out in organized chaos, their teacher trying to maintain order. Mrs. Carter, the teacher called out, the children have been following your story. They wanted to do something to help. Each child had drawn a picture or written a letter. They presented them solemnly, one by one. Pictures of the diner as a castle, Evelyn as a superhero, the bikers as knights protecting the kingdom. Letters thanking her for helping their parents, their uncles, their neighbors. One little boy, no more than 6, tugged on her sleeve. Mrs. Carter, are you really an angel? She knelt down to his level. No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who makes coffee and tries to help when I can. That sounds like an angel to me, he said, with the certainty only children possess. As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed almost celebratory, Evelyn stood on the porch of her diner looking out at the transformed landscape. What had been an empty parking lot was now a fairground of hope. Music played from multiple sources, creating an oddly harmonious cacophony. People shared food stories, laughter. Bikers played with children. Truckers compared routes with local families. The Red Hat Society had somehow started a dance line with the construction workers. It's beautiful, Diane said, joining her mother. It's chaos, Evelyn corrected, but she was smiling. It's community, Jake said, appearing on her other side. This is what community looks like when it remembers how to care. The lawyer Catherine approached with a tablet. Evelyn, I've been keeping track. Between direct donations, the state fund, and various pledges, you're looking at close to $3 million designated for the diner and associated charitable works. $3 million. Evelyn had to sit down on the bench Tom had built their first summer. What do I do with $3 million? Whatever you want, Catherine said. But if I may suggest, you do what you've always done. You help people. Just now you can help more of them. As darkness fell, the crowd showed no signs of dispersing. If anything, it grew as people got off work and drove to be part of something they'd seen on the news. Someone had brought professional lighting equipment. A food truck owner announced he was donating all proceeds to the diner. A local band set up and began playing, turning the gathering into an impromptu concert. Evelyn moved through it all like a dream walker, still trying to reconcile the woman who'd sat with $47 yesterday with the one who now commanded millions in resources and the loyalty of thousands. She found herself back in the diner in the relative quiet of the kitchen. This was where she felt most herself among the familiar equipment, the worn surfaces that knew her hands better than any person did. Ghost found her there. You okay? I don't know, she admitted. Yesterday I knew who I was. I was the woman who ran a failing diner. Today I don't know what I am. You're the same person, Ghost said firmly. The only thing that's changed is that now everyone else knows what you've always been, a lighthouse keeper, keeping the light on for lost ships. Your mother would have understood this, Evelyn said. The feeling of being overwhelmed by kindness you don't feel you deserve. She did understand it. Every time she talked about you, she said she didn't deserve that kind of help. But that was the point, wasn't it? Deserving had nothing to do with it. Through the kitchen window, Evelyn could see the crowd still celebrating. She saw Jake organizing security shifts for the night, ensuring the diner would be protected. She saw Diane serving coffee to newcomers, falling naturally into the rhythm of the diner. She saw Sarah Morrison in her Navy uniform, talking to young people about service and second chances. She saw Roberto's boys playing with other children, their parents watching, with the easy comfort of people who knew their children were safe. She saw the Red Hat Society teaching the bikers to dance properly. She saw truckers and construction workers and software engineers and teachers all mixing together, united by nothing more than proximity to kindness. This is going to change everything, she said to Ghost. Everything's already changed, he replied. This is just the world catching up to what you've been doing all along. The night deepened, but the celebration continued. The Midnight Haven sign glowed against the darkness, no longer just advertising a diner, but announcing a movement, a belief that kindness matters, that small acts can have enormous consequences, that sometimes angels wear aprons and serve coffee and save lives one cup at a time. The celebration continued deep into the night, but by 3 a.m, exhaustion finally began to claim its due. The crowd had thinned to a dedicated core. The Iron Vultures, some truckers who'd decided to sleep in their cabs, and a handful of locals who couldn't quite believe what they'd witnessed. Evelyn sat in her usual spot at the counter, Diane beside her, both women cradling cups of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. I should probably head to the motel, Diane said, though she made no move to leave. Get a room before they're all taken. Don't be ridiculous, Evelyn replied. Your room is still upstairs, same as always. You kept it. After our fight, after I said those terrible things, you're my daughter. The room stays yours no matter what words pass between us. They climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment above the diner, Diane's hand trailing along the wallpaper she'd helped Tom hang 20 years ago. The small living space was exactly as she remembered. Worn furniture that was perfectly comfortable, photographs covering every surface, the faint smell of coffee that had permanently embedded itself in the walls. Nothing's changed, Diane whispered. Everything's changed, Evelyn corrected, sinking into Tom's old recliner. I just haven't had time to redecorate. Diane studied a photograph on the mantel, her parents on their wedding day, Tom in an ill-fitting suit, Evelyn in a simple dress she'd sewn herself. They looked so young, so hopeful, completely unaware of the journey ahead. Tell me about that night, Diane said. The night the bikers came, before all this madness started. Evelyn closed her eyes, remembering. I was ready to give up. $47, Diane. That's all I had left. I was going to serve out the week, then hand the keys to the bank and disappear somewhere. Maybe follow you to Portland, after all, show up on your doorstep like a stray cat. Mom. Then I heard the motorcycles. In that storm, it sounded like the world ending. When they walked in, all 15 of them frozen half to death, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Stress, exhaustion, grief, all of it finally catching up. But they were real. Very real. Scared too, though they'd never admit it. They thought they were going to die out there. And something in me just responded. like muscle memory. Coffee first, questions later. Your father's voice in my head saying, everyone deserves warmth in a storm. Diane moved to the window, looking down at the parking lot, where a few bikers still stood guard. They saved you because you saved them first. They saved me because that's what people do when they remember how to be human. The money, the protection, all of that, it's just the visible part. The real salvation was remembering I'm not alone. That all those years of small kindnesses weren't just disappearing into the void. A knock at the door interrupted them. Evelyn opened it to find Jake looking uncertain, an expression that seemed foreign on his weathered face. Sorry to disturb you, but there's something you should know. We've been monitoring the roads, and there's another problem coming. They followed him downstairs to find several bikers huddled around a laptop police scanner crackling nearby. Marcus looked up grimly. There's a family broken down about 15 miles east. Van died in the middle of nowhere. 2 adults, 4 kids. Temperatures dropping again. State police, Evelyn asked. Tied up with an accident on I-70. Tow trucks are hours out. Nobody's coming. Evelyn was already reaching for her coat. Then we go. Evelyn, no, Jake protested. We'll handle it. You've done enough. This is what I do, she interrupted. This is what we do. The storm might be over, but people still need help. Within minutes, a convoy was organized. Jake's truck in the lead, followed by 2 more pickups with supplies, blankets, hot coffee and thermoses, emergency tools. Evelyn rode with Jake while Diane stayed behind to keep the diner open for any stragglers. The 15-mile drive took almost an hour on the icy roads. They found the van on the shoulder hazard lights growing dim as the battery died. Inside, a young couple held their children close, the oldest, maybe 10, the youngest still an infant. Thank God, the father breathed as Jake knocked on the window. We've been here 3 hours. The kids are so cold. They worked with practiced efficiency. Evelyn took the baby, wrapping it in fresh blankets while cooing softly. The other children were loaded into the warm trucks. Jake and Diesel assessed the van thrown rod engine completely shot. Where were you heading? Evelyn asked the mother, a young woman who looked barely out of her teens herself. Wyoming. My husband got a job in Cheyenne. We spent everything we had getting this far. She started crying. We can't afford repairs, can't afford a motel. I don't know what we're going to do. Yes, you do, Evelyn said firmly. You're going to come back to the diner. You're going to get warm, get fed, and we're going to figure this out together. But we can't pay. Did I ask for payment? No, so that's settled. Back at the Midnight Haven, the family, the Andersons. Evelyn learned huddled in a booth while she prepared food. The children devoured pancakes like they hadn't eaten in days, which their mother quietly admitted wasn't far from the truth. We sold everything for this move, Mr. Anderson explained. The job in Cheyenne was supposed to be our fresh start. But the van was older than we thought, and... He trailed off, defeat written across his young face. Jake had been making calls. He approached the table with news. I've got a mechanic coming at sunrise. Friend of mine owes me a favor. He'll look at the van. We can't afford... Already handled. Jake cut him off. The question is, do you have somewhere to stay in Cheyenne when you get there? My brother, Mrs. Anderson said. He's expecting us. Has a room ready for the kids and everything. Then we just need to get you there. Catherine, the lawyer, who'd apparently been sleeping in her car in the parking lot, entered with her tablet. I've been researching. The Good Samaritan Fund, the governor announced, it's already active. This family qualifies for emergency transportation assistance. We're not looking for charity, Mr. Anderson protested weakly. It's not charity, Evelyn said, refilling his coffee. It's people helping people. Someday, when you're settled in Cheyenne, when things are better, you'll help someone else. That's how this works. The youngest Anderson child, a girl of maybe 4, tugged on Evelyn's apron. Are you the angel lady everyone's talking about? Just a lady who makes pancakes, Evelyn replied, but the child looked unconvinced. As dawn broke on the 3rd day since the storm, the Midnight Haven had transformed into something beyond a diner. It had become a command center for compassion. Catherine had set up a makeshift office in the corner booth, processing applications for the Good Samaritan Fund. A rotation of volunteers had established itself, locals taking shifts to help with the overwhelming demand. The mechanic arrived as promised, a gruff man named Earl, who took one look at the Andersons' van and whistled low. This thing's held together with prayer and duct tape. Can you fix it? Jake asked. I can get it to Cheyenne. Beyond that, no promises. The repairs took most of the morning. Meanwhile, the Anderson children played with toys that materialized from somewhere, donations that had been arriving steadily. Mrs. Anderson helped in the kitchen, insisting she had to do something to contribute. Mr. Anderson was outside with the bikers learning basic motorcycle maintenance from Diesel, who'd decided everyone should know how to fix their own ride. Around noon, Sarah Morrison returned out of uniform, now in civilian clothes that made her look younger. She sought out Evelyn in the kitchen. I need to tell you something else, she said. About that night, 15 years ago. Evelyn paused in her prep work, giving Sarah her full attention. I was pregnant, Sarah said quietly. 17 years old, strung out pregnant. I lost the baby while I was in the hospital. The doctors said it was inevitable given my condition, but you held me while I cried. You never judged, never lectured. You just said that sometimes life takes things away so we can become who we're meant to be. I remember, Evelyn said softly. I became a Navy nurse, saved lives in combat zones because losing that baby made me realize how precious life is. Every life I've saved, I've thought about that child I lost, about you holding me through the worst night of my existence. You turned pain into purpose, Evelyn observed. That's the hardest transformation there is. I learned it from you. Watching you these past days, I realized that's what you did after Tom died. Turned your grief into fuel for helping others. Before Evelyn could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. A line of expensive cars had pulled up, Mercedes, BMWs, even a Tesla. Out stepped men and women in business suits, looking remarkably out of place among the bikers and truckers. Their leader, a silver-haired man with an expensive watch, approached the diner. Jake intercepted him, suspicious. Can we help you? I'm looking for Mrs. Carter. I'm Thomas Brennan, CEO of Brennan Industries. Another banker, Diesel growled. No, not a banker. I'm here about my daughter. He pulled out a photograph of a young woman. Rebecca. 3 years ago, she ran away from rehab. We hired private investigators, offered rewards, did everything money could do. Nothing worked. Recognition dawned on Evelyn's face. Becca. She called herself just Becca. You knew her. She worked here for 6 months. Stayed in the apartment upstairs when she had nowhere else to go. She was getting clean, getting strong. Where is she now? Brennan's composure cracked, desperation showing through. She went home, Evelyn said gently. About 2 years ago. Said she was ready to face her family to make amends. She never came home. Brennan's voice broke. We never heard from her. Evelyn felt her heart sink, but then Diane spoke up from behind the counter. Wait. Becca from San Francisco, curly red hair scar on her left hand. Yes, Brennan almost shouted. She didn't go to San Francisco. She went to the rehab facility in Denver first. The good one, Mountain View. She wanted to finish properly before facing you. Mom, you drove her there yourself, remember? Evelyn's memory clicked. Of course. She wanted to complete a full program, get her certification of sobriety before going home. She was terrified of disappointing you again. She's at Mountain View. Brennan was already pulling out his phone. She might have completed the program by now, Evelyn cautioned. But they'll have records. As Brennan made frantic calls, his entourage milled about uncertainly. One of them, a younger man, approached Evelyn. I'm James Thomas's son, Rebecca's brother. We've been looking for her for 3 years. Mom hasn't been the same since she left. She talked about you, Evelyn said. Said you were the successful one, the one who never screwed up. She was terrified of being compared to you. I just wanted my sister back, James said quietly. Success doesn't mean much when your family is broken. Brennan returned, tears streaming down his face. She's there. She's been there for 2 years. Completed the program, then stayed on as a counselor. She's been clean for 26 months. He grabbed Evelyn's hands. She's been 3 hours away this whole time, and we never knew. Why didn't she call? James asked. Because she was waiting to be perfect, Evelyn said, understanding completely. She wanted to come home whole, not as the broken daughter who needed saving again. We never wanted perfect, Brennan whispered. We just wanted her. Then go tell her that. Today. Don't wait another minute. The business executive looked around the diner at the bikers and truckers and locals all watching with interest. This place, you saved my daughter. She saved herself. I just gave her a safe place to do it. Brennan pulled out a checkbook. Whatever you need, go to your daughter, Evelyn interrupted. That's payment enough. But Brennan's son James lingered. There's something else. Our company, Brennan Industries, we do development. Hotels, restaurants, that kind of thing. We'd like to invest in this area, but not to change it. To support it. Build infrastructure that helps places like this thrive, not compete with them. Jake stepped forward, protective. This community doesn't need corporate development. No, but it needs jobs, James countered. It needs reasons for young people to stay instead of leaving for cities. We're talking about sustainable development, working with local businesses, not replacing them. We'll think about it, Evelyn said diplomatically. But first, go get Rebecca. Bring her here if she wants. She always has a place at this counter. As the Brennan convoy departed, the Andersons' van sputtered to life in the parking lot. Earl, the mechanic, gave a thumbs up. She'll make it to Cheyenne. Probably won't make it back, but she'll make it there. The Anderson family gathered their few belongings, their children clutching new toys and full bellies. Mrs. Anderson was crying as she hugged Evelyn. We'll pay this forward, she promised. Someday, somehow. I know you will. That's why we do it. As the van pulled away, heading toward their new life in Wyoming, Ghost approached Evelyn. He'd been quiet all morning, watching everything with those old young eyes. My mom would have loved seeing what this place has become, he said. A lighthouse not just for the lost, but for everyone. It's what it always was, Evelyn replied. People just notice it now. No, it's more. It's become what my mom believed in, the idea that kindness is contagious, that one good deed creates ripples that never stop spreading. The afternoon brought unexpected challenges. A group of protesters arrived carrying signs declaring the gathering a publicity stunt, claiming Evelyn was profiting from manufactured charity. They set up across the highway, their chants disrupting the peace. Jake and the bikers wanted to confront them, but Evelyn had a different idea. She loaded a tray with coffee and sandwiches and walked across the highway alone despite protests from everyone. You must be cold, she said to the lead protester, a young man with angry eyes, and hungry. Protesting is hard work. We don't want your charity, he spat. It's not charity, it's lunch. Even people I disagree with deserve lunch. The protester seemed thrown off balance. You're just doing this for the cameras. What cameras? Evelyn looked around. Indeed, the media had mostly departed, moving on to the next story. I'm doing this because you're human beings standing in the cold. One of the other protesters, a young woman, accepted a cup of coffee. Why? She asked. Why be kind to people protesting you? Because that's what we do here. Everyone gets coffee. Everyone gets kindness. Even people who think I'm a fraud. Are you a fraud? I'm a 71-year-old woman who runs a diner. People have decided to make me into something more, but that's their choice, not mine. I just serve coffee and try to help when I can. The lead protester took a sandwich almost against his will. My grandmother lost her house to foreclosure. Nobody helped her. No viral video, no millionaire donors. Just an old woman dying alone in a nursing home. I'm sorry, Evelyn said, and meant it. That shouldn't have happened. But it did. It happens every day. You get saved because you got lucky, went viral. What about everyone else? You're right, Evelyn admitted. It's not fair. The attention I've received, the help, it's disproportionate. But what would you have me do if use it, send everyone away? Use it, the young woman said suddenly. If you really care, use this attention to help more than just yourself. That's the plan. The Good Samaritan Fund, the foundation being set up, it's all designed to help travelers in need across the state. Not just travelers, the lead protester said, his anger dimming. People like my grandmother. Locals who get forgotten. Then help us figure out how, Evelyn challenged. Stop protesting and start participating. We need ideas, volunteers, people who understand the community's real needs. The conversation continued for an hour, the protest signs gradually lowering, then being set aside entirely. By the time Evelyn walked back to the diner, she had 3 new volunteers for the foundation and a list of local seniors who needed assistance. Jake shook his head in amazement. You turned protesters into volunteers. They were never really protesters. They were just hurt people looking for someone to blame. Can't say I blame them. The unfairness of who gets help and who doesn't is real. As evening approached, a familiar car pulled into the lot. The banker, Richard Brennan, but this time accompanied by an elderly woman. Mrs. Carter, Brennan said. I'd like you to meet my mother, Eleanor. Eleanor Brennan, 90 if she was a day, moved with the assistance of a walker, but with determination in every step. I had to meet you, she said, her voice strong despite her age. Had to meet the woman who reminded my son that banks are supposed to help people, not destroy them. I didn't do anything. You did everything, Eleanor interrupted. You shamed him into remembering why his father started that bank. Not for profits, but to help the community thrive. Richard's been on the phone all day reviewing every foreclosure in process, looking for ways to help instead of foreclose. Mother exaggerates, Richard said, but his ears reddened. I do not. Show her the list. Reluctantly, Richard pulled out a folder. 17 properties facing foreclosure. We're restructuring all of them, offering payment plans that actually work. It's what we should have been doing all along. That's wonderful, Evelyn said, genuinely pleased. It's a start, Eleanor said. But I have a better idea. Richard, tell her about the empty building. Mother, tell her. Richard sighed. The bank owns an empty building in town. Used to be a department store. It's been vacant for 5 years. We're donating it to the Evelyn Carter Foundation. I don't have a foundation. You do now. Catherine, the lawyer, interjected, appearing with papers. I've been busy. The Evelyn Carter Foundation dedicated to providing emergency assistance and temporary shelter to anyone in need. The building Mr. Brennan is offering could house dozens of people temporarily, plus serve as a food bank and resource center. This is happening too fast, Evelyn protested. Good things should happen fast, Eleanor said. I'm 90 years old. I don't have time for slow. As they discussed the details, more stories emerged. Eleanor had been one of the original investors in the diner 30 years ago, believing in Tom's vision when banks wouldn't lend to him. She'd been a silent partner, never taking profits, just believing in the dream. Tom knew, Evelyn asked, stunned. He knew. We agreed you shouldn't know. You'd have felt obligated, and obligation ruins genuine kindness. But now Tom's gone, and I'm old, and secrets seem silly. The revelation recontextualized everything. The diner had been saved once before by kindness, by someone believing in Tom's dream of creating a haven for travelers. Now it was being saved again, the circle of kindness completing itself across decades. As night fell on the third day, the crowd had evolved from celebration to purpose. Committees were forming, some focused on the foundation, others on renovating the donated building, still others on creating a network of havens along highways across the country. The Iron Vultures had decided to make the Midnight Haven their official headquarters for the region, ensuring constant protection and patronage. The Truckers' Union was establishing it as a mandatory stop on certain routes. The Red Hat Society had claimed the corner booth as their unofficial meeting spot. But in the midst of all this organizing and planning, Evelyn found herself overwhelmed. She escaped to the roof, a spot Tom had built a small deck on for watching sunsets. Diane found her there. Running away? Diane asked gently. Trying to breathe. 3 days ago, I was ready to disappear. Now I'm apparently running a foundation, a shelter, and becoming some sort of folk hero. It's too much. Dad would have loved this, Diane said, sitting beside her mother. Your father would have hidden in the walk-in cooler until everyone went home. They laughed, remembering Tom's notorious shyness, his preference for quiet acts of kindness over public recognition. But he also would have understood that this isn't about you, Diane continued. It's about what you represent. Hope. The belief that people are basically good, that kindness matters, that small places and ordinary people can change the world. I'm not changing the world. I'm just running a diner. Same thing, apparently. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights below the diner, glowing like a beacon. The parking lot full of people who'd become family. The highway stretching in both directions, like a river of possibility. Ghost appeared on the roof, having discovered their hiding spot. There's someone else here to see you, Evelyn. Says he's been driving for 2 days to get here. They descended to find an elderly black man standing by the counter, wearing a Vietnam veteran cap and holding a worn photograph. You probably don't remember me, he began. Samuel Washington, Evelyn said immediately. You had a heart attack in the parking lot 7 years ago. I did CPR until the ambulance arrived. You saved my life. But more than that, you visited me in the hospital, every day for 2 weeks. You brought me books, real food, and most importantly, you listened to my stories. You had good stories. 3 tours in Vietnam civil rights marches, raising 5 kids alone after your wife died. You're a hero, Samuel. No, ma'am. You're the hero. Because of you, I got to see my youngest graduate college. Got to walk my daughter down the aisle. Got to meet my grandchildren. He pulled out an envelope. This isn't money. It's something better. Inside was a Medal of Honor. Samuel, no, I can't. It's not mine. It belonged to my best friend, Marcus Thompson. Died saving our squad in '68. His widow gave it to me before she passed, said to give it to someone worthy. I've carried it for 40 years, waiting to find that person. He pressed it into her hands. You're that person, Evelyn. You fight for people every day just without bullets. The diner had gone completely silent. Everyone understood the weight of what was being offered. A Medal of Honor, even one given privately, represented the highest form of sacrifice and service. I'll keep it here, Evelyn said finally. In the diner. It belongs to everyone who's ever helped someone else. Marcus Thompson's sacrifice, your service, everyone's kindness, it all matters equally. Samuel nodded, tears in his eyes. That's exactly what Marcus would have wanted. As midnight approached again, marking the end of the third day since the storm, Evelyn stood in her diner surrounded by hundreds of people who'd become family. The $47 that had seemed so final just days ago now seemed like a distant memory from another lifetime. Jake raised a coffee mug in toast. To Evelyn Carter, who reminded us that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have coffee pots and worn aprons and hearts bigger than the Colorado sky. To the Midnight Haven, Evelyn countered, and to everyone who's ever needed shelter from a storm. They drank coffee instead of champagne, ate pie instead of cake, and celebrated in the way that felt most appropriate with simple food, honest conversation, and the warmth that comes from knowing you're not alone. The coffee mugs clinked together in the midnight toast, and as the sound faded, a peculiar quiet settled over the diner. It was the kind of quiet that comes after a symphony ends, when the echoes are still felt, but the music has stopped. Evelyn set down her mug and noticed her hands were trembling, not from fear or exhaustion, but from the weight of realization. Everything had changed, and there was no going back to the simple anonymity she'd known for 71 years. Samuel Washington hadn't left after presenting the Medal of Honor. He'd taken a seat at the counter, ordering black coffee and a slice of apple pie like it was any other night, like he hadn't just handed over one of the most precious things in American military history. His presence seemed to anchor everyone, a reminder that heroes come in many forms. Tell me about Marcus Thompson, Ghost said, sliding onto the stool next to Samuel. The man who earned that medal. Samuel's weathered face softened. Marcus was 19 years old. Detroit kid could have gone to college on a basketball scholarship, but enlisted instead. Said he couldn't play games while other boys were dying for their country. He paused, stirring his coffee, though he'd added nothing to it. Last day of his life, our squad walked into an ambush. NVA had us pinned from 3 sides. Marcus threw himself on a grenade. Gave the rest of us time to find cover call in support. 19. Ghost repeated, and Evelyn could see him thinking about his own mother, about sacrifices made too young. Same age as a lot of the kids I've helped here, Evelyn said quietly. Runaways, addicts, lost souls barely out of their teens. Marcus Thompson saved soldiers. I just serve coffee to kids who remind me someone should have saved them sooner. That's exactly why you deserve his medal, Samuel said firmly. Marcus believed in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. That's what you do every day, just in a different battlefield. Jake had been standing near the window watching the parking lot, where members of various motorcycle clubs still mingled despite the late hour. He turned back to the room with an expression Evelyn had learned to recognize he'd made a decision about something important. We need to talk about security, he announced. This place has become too important to leave vulnerable. I don't need bodyguards, Evelyn protested. Not bodyguards. Protection for the haven itself. There are people who won't like what this place represents, what it's becoming. We've already seen protesters. There'll be worse. He's right, Catherine the lawyer interjected, looking up from her laptop, where she'd been working despite the hour. I've been monitoring social media. For every 1,000 supporters, there are people calling this a scam, saying you're exploiting sympathy for profit. Some of the comments are threatening. Diesel cracked his knuckles loudly. Let them try something. That's exactly the wrong response, Evelyn said sharply. Violence protecting kindness defeats the entire purpose. We handle threats the same way we handle everything else, with coffee and conversation. Some people don't want conversation, Jake warned. Then they don't have to come. But we don't turn into something we're not out of fear. Tom built this place as a haven. Havens don't have armed guards. The discussion continued, but Evelyn's attention was drawn to a young woman who'd been sitting alone in a corner booth for the past hour, hunched over a notebook, writing furiously. She looked familiar, but Evelyn couldn't place her. Approaching with the coffee pot, Evelyn asked, "Need a refill?" The woman looked up, revealing red-rimmed eyes and a face Evelyn suddenly recognized. Rebecca Brennan. "Hi, Mrs. Carter." The young woman's voice was barely a whisper. "My father was here earlier. My brother. They went to Mountain View to find me, but I'd already left. Been driving for hours. Saw the news had to come. They're looking for you, sweetheart. They're desperate to find you." "I know. I'm just not ready. I've been clean for 26 months, but being clean doesn't erase what I did. The money I stole, the lies I told, the pain I caused." She gestured at her notebook. "I've been writing letters. Apologies to everyone I hurt. It's part of my recovery, but also part of my fear. Once I face them, I can't run anymore." Evelyn slid into the booth across from her. "Running is exhausting, isn't it? Exhausting doesn't begin to cover it. When I worked here those 6 months, it was the first time I stopped running. You never asked about my past, never pushed for details. You just gave me work, purpose, dignity. Everyone deserves dignity. Not everyone believes that. My father, he built his fortune on believing some people deserve more than others. The worthy and the unworthy. I became unworthy the first time I got arrested. Yet he's been searching for you for 3 years. For his daughter. Not for me. For the girl I was before the drugs, before the failures. That girl is dead, Mrs. Carter. I killed her with my own hands, one needle at a time." Evelyn reached across the table, taking Rebecca's hands. They were shaking, and she could feel the raised scars from old track marks. "You're wrong. That girl grew up, went through hell, and survived. She's sitting right here, 26 months clean, helping other addicts find their way. That's not death, Rebecca. That's resurrection. My family won't see it that way. You won't know until you try. Your father was crying, Rebecca. Your brother said success means nothing with the family broken. They don't want perfect. They want you." Before Rebecca could respond, commotion erupted outside. Not violence, but excitement. Someone was shouting about lights in the sky. Everyone rushed to the windows and doors, spilling out into the parking lot. Above them, the aurora borealis danced across the Colorado sky, an incredibly rare occurrence this far south. Sheets of green and purple light undulated like cosmic curtains, transforming the night into something magical. "It's a sign," someone whispered. "It's atmospheric particles colliding with solar wind," Marcus corrected, but even he sounded awed. Evelyn stood between Rebecca and Ghost, watching the lights dance. "Tom proposed to me during an aurora," she said softly. "We were camping in Alaska, just kids, really. He said the lights were the universe celebrating our love. I told him he was being ridiculous, but secretly I believed him." "Do you still believe?" Ghost asked. "I believe the universe pays attention sometimes. Maybe not in the way we think, but somehow attention is paid." The aurora lasted only 15 minutes, But in that time, something shifted. Rebecca pulled out her phone and called her father. Evelyn couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the young woman's face cycle through fear, relief, and finally joy. When she hung up, she was crying. "They're coming back," she said. "They're coming to get me." "You could go to them," Evelyn suggested. "No, I need them to come here, to see where I found myself again, to meet the woman who saved me when they couldn't." As people filtered back inside discussing the aurora with the excitement of children who'd seen magic, a new arrival caught Evelyn's attention. A middle-aged woman in an expensive coat looking utterly lost among the bikers and truckers. "Can I help you?" Evelyn approached her. "I'm looking for my husband, Richard Brennan, the banker. His mother said he was here." This was Mrs. Brennan then, Rebecca's mother. The woman looked fragile, like she might shatter if someone spoke too loudly. "He was here earlier. He's gone to look for Rebecca." Mrs. Brennan's composure cracked. He found Rebecca. She found herself. But yes, she's here." Mother and daughter saw each other across the crowded diner. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mrs. Brennan was actually running in her designer heels, and Rebecca met her halfway. They collapsed into each other, both sobbing, while the entire diner pretended not to watch. "My baby," Mrs. Brennan kept saying. "My baby girl." "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "No, I'm sorry. We pushed too hard, expected too much. We made you feel like our love was conditional. Wasn't it? Never, not for a single second. We just didn't know how to show it without trying to fix you." Richard and James Brennan arrived 30 minutes later, having driven back at dangerous speeds. The family reunion that followed was messy, complicated, and beautiful. Evelyn gave them space, but Rebecca insisted she stay close. "This is Evelyn Carter," Rebecca told her family. "She saved my life. Not dramatically, not with grand gestures. She gave me a job washing dishes. She let me sleep upstairs when I had nowhere to go. She treated me like a person when I'd forgotten I was one." Richard Brennan studied Evelyn with new eyes. "The news stories don't do you justice. The news stories are about someone I don't recognize," Evelyn replied. "I'm just someone who runs a diner." "No," Rebecca said firmly. "You're someone who sees people, really sees them. Not their mistakes or their potential or their social status. You see them as they are and decide they're worth kindness anyway." James Brennan had been quiet, but now he spoke. "The development proposal I mentioned earlier, I want to modify it. Instead of hotels and restaurants, what if we created recovery centers, halfway houses that feel like homes, not institutions? Places where people like Rebecca can rebuild without shame. Using the Midnight Haven as a model," his father added. "Places of unconditional welcome." "That's a conversation for daylight," Evelyn said. "Tonight, just be a family." As the Brennan family talked, reconnecting after 3 years of separation, Jake approached Evelyn with concern on his face. "We have another situation. There's a bus broken down about 20 miles north. Church group from Kansas, mostly elderly folks on their way to a retreat." "How many?" 35. "The bus driver's trying to keep them warm, but the heating system's failing." Evelyn was already reaching for her coat. "We bring them here." "Evelyn, we don't have room for 35 more people." "Then we make room. We always make room." The rescue operation took 2 hours. The Iron Vultures and local volunteers formed a convoy, transferring the elderly passengers in groups. The church folks were initially terrified of the bikers, but by the time they reached the Midnight Haven, Diesel was carrying their luggage and discussing scripture with their pastor. The diner was beyond capacity, but somehow everyone fit. The church group's pastor, Reverend Williams, an elderly black woman with silver hair and kind eyes, approached Evelyn. "I've heard about you," she said. "The angel of Highway 70. I thought it was just trucker mythology." "It is," Evelyn assured her. "I'm just someone with coffee and too much time on her hands." "Humility is admirable, but false humility is just another form of pride," Reverend Williams said gently. "You've been given a gift, Mrs. Carter. The gift of being able to love without judgment. That's rarer than you might think. Everyone can love without judgment. Can they look around this room? Bikers, church folks, bankers, addicts, veterans, teenagers. In any other context, these groups would avoid or even antagonize each other. But here they're sharing coffee and stories. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because someone sets the tone, creates the space, holds the center. Tom created this space. Tom built the building. You built the sanctuary." The word sanctuary resonated. That's what the Midnight Haven had become, not just a shelter from physical storms, but from the storms of judgment, isolation, and despair that raged in so many lives. As the night wore on, stories continued to emerge. The church group was on their way to a retreat for grieving spouses. Every person on the bus had lost their partner in the last 2 years. They'd been strangers before this trip, united only by loss. "We call ourselves the Walking Wounded," one elderly man explained, "because that's what we are. Still walking, but wounded in ways that don't show." "I understand," Evelyn said, and they could tell she did. The convergence of so many different groups created an unexpected alchemy. Rebecca Brennan found herself talking to Reverend Williams about faith and recovery. Ghost connected with a widow whose son had also died from addiction. The construction workers from earlier had returned and were discussing with James Brennan what recovery-centered development might look like. Diane had given up trying to serve everyone in an orderly fashion. Instead, she'd set up a buffet line with everything they had: soup, sandwiches, pie, endless coffee. People served themselves and each other, the boundaries between server and served dissolving entirely. Around 4 in the morning, when exhaustion should have claimed everyone, a strange energy kept people awake. It was as if they all understood they were part of something that wouldn't happen again, a convergence that needed to be fully experienced. Marcus, the biker with wire-rimmed glasses, had found the diner's ancient piano, usually buried under supplies in the corner. He'd cleared it off and was playing not well, but with feeling. Others joined in singing old songs everyone seemed to know: "Amazing Grace," "This Land Is Your Land," "Stand By Me." Evelyn found herself standing with Jake on the porch, watching through the windows, as people who'd been strangers hours ago sang together like old friends. "This is what you built," Jake said. "This exact thing. I didn't build anything. I just didn't close the door." Sometimes that's the hardest thing, keeping the door open when everything tells you to close it. Tom believed in open doors, said you never knew who might walk through, what angel might be disguised as a trucker or a traveling salesman. Or a biker. Especially a biker. Tom had a theory that the people who looked the scariest were often the safest. They'd already faced their demons, he said. It was the ones who looked perfect you had to watch out for. Jake laughed. Smart man. He would have loved this. All of it. The chaos, the convergence, the absolute impossibility of what's happening. It's not impossible. It's just rare. People remembering how to be human together. Dawn approached with a spectacular sunrise, the sky turning shades of pink and gold that seemed to celebrate the night's events. The church group's bus had been repaired by a mechanic Jake called in. The Brennan family had found reconciliation. The various groups who'd converged on the Midnight Haven began preparing to continue their journeys. But before anyone left, Reverend Williams called for attention. "I'd like to say something. What we've experienced here, this radical hospitality, this unconditional welcome, this is what every religious tradition preaches but rarely practices. Mrs. Carter, you've created a living sermon, a theology of coffee and kindness that transcends any doctrine I could preach." "It's just a diner," Evelyn protested one more time. "No." Samuel Washington stood up. "It's a haven. There's a difference. Diners serve food. Havens save lives." "My mother's life," Ghost added. "My daughter's life," Richard Brennan said. "My family." Roberto Anderson called out, having returned to thank Evelyn once more before continuing to Wyoming. One by one, people stood and testified to the lives saved, the hope restored, the dignity preserved by this small diner on Highway 70. It became a litany of gratitude that left Evelyn weeping openly. Catherine, the lawyer, had been documenting everything, and now she stood with an announcement. The Evelyn Carter Foundation has received another $1 million in donations just in the last 12 hours. We have enough to not only sustain the Midnight Haven indefinitely, but to create a network of havens across the country. "That's too much," Evelyn said. "I can't manage all that." "You won't have to," Diane said, stepping forward. "I'm staying. I'm done with Portland. This is where I belong, helping you run not just the diner but the foundation. Dad would want us doing this together." "And you'll have help," Jake added. "The Iron Vultures are establishing a permanent presence. We'll maintain security help with operations, whatever you need." "The church groups of Kansas are mobilizing," Reverend Williams announced. "We're creating a volunteer network to staff the havens. Brennan Industries will handle the infrastructure and development," James Brennan committed. It was overwhelming, this outpouring of commitment. Evelyn had to sit down, had to process that her small act of kindness to 15 bikers in a storm had avalanched into a movement. "I need some air," she said, and everyone understood. She walked out to the field behind the diner where Tom was buried beneath a simple headstone. The morning sun illuminated the marker, making the inscription glow. "Thomas Carter, 1952-2020, he fed the hungry." "You did this," she told the grave. "You started all this with your crazy dream of a place where everyone was welcome. I just kept the coffee brewing after you left." She felt, rather than heard, someone approach. It was Rebecca Brennan, looking healthier already just from being reunited with her family. "Thank you," Rebecca said simply. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. That's what Tom taught me. Everyone's worth seeing, everyone's worth saving. I'm going to stay too if you'll have me. Work at the foundation, help other addicts. Turn my mess into a message, as Reverend Williams says." "Of course you can stay. The apartment upstairs is still available if you need it. My family has offered me a place, but I might take you up on that sometimes, when I need to remember who I am now, not who I was before." They stood together, watching the sun climb higher, warming the cold Colorado morning. Behind them, the Midnight Haven hummed with life, with purpose, with the energy of transformation. Ghost appeared carrying 3 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need these." They stood together, the elderly diner owner, the recovering addict, and the young biker who'd lost his mother, 3 people united by nothing more than kindness and coffee, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. "What happens now?" Rebecca asked. "When everyone leaves, when the cameras stop rolling, when it's just another day on Highway 70. "The same thing that's always happened," Evelyn replied. "We keep the lights on. We make the coffee. We open the door for whoever needs to come through it. But it's all different now. You're famous. This place is legendary. Fame fades. Legends become myths. but needs remain constant. People will always need shelter from storms, whether they're made of snow or sorrow or circumstance. That's what we provide. That's what we've always provided. A convoy of motorcycles roared to life in the parking lot, the iron vultures preparing to escort the church bus part of the way, ensuring their safe passage. Jake approached for a final word before departing. "This isn't goodbye," he said. "Full moon in 2 weeks, we'll be back with riders from 6 states. It's going to be the biggest gathering this highway has ever seen." "I'll make sure we have enough pie," Evelyn promised. "Make sure you have enough everything. This story, what you've done, it's spreading faster than the internet can carry it. People need hope, Evelyn. You've given them proof that kindness still matters, that small places can change the world. The world doesn't need changing. People just need reminding that they're not alone." Jake kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it surprised them both. "Thank you for reminding us." As the bikers departed, their thunder fading into the distance, the church bus following, with honks of gratitude, the Brennan family preparing for their new journey together. Evelyn stood in the doorway of her diner and surveyed what remained. The parking lot was still full, locals who'd become volunteers, media stragglers hoping for one more story, travelers who'd heard about the Midnight Haven and came to see if the stories were true. The work would continue, expanded now beyond anything Tom could have imagined. Diane appeared at her elbow. "You realize you've started something that can't be stopped now." "I didn't start anything. I just made coffee for some cold bikers." And lit a match that became a wildfire of human decency. "That's a bit dramatic." "Have you seen the news? The hashtag #Midnight Haven has 20 million uses. People are sharing their own stories of roadside kindness, creating their own havens. A diner in Tennessee just announced they're following your model, no one turned away, everyone welcome. A truck stop in Ohio is creating a fund for stranded travelers. You've started a revolution, Mom." "Tom started it. I just kept it going." "Then we'll keep keeping it going. Together." They walked back into the diner together, mother and daughter united in purpose for the first time in years. The Midnight Haven continued its work, serving coffee and comfort to anyone who needed it. But now it served something more, proof that kindness is contagious, that generosity creates abundance, that one small light in the darkness can inspire others to shine. The sign outside flickered in the morning sun, the neon unnecessary in daylight, but left on anyway. The Midnight Haven always open. It had been Tom's promise, maintained by Evelyn through poverty and grief, and now guaranteed by a community that had finally understood its value. Inside, the coffee was fresh, the pie was warm, and the door was open. Just as it had always been. Just as it would always be. Because some things once started develop a life of their own, and the Midnight Haven had become more than a diner, more than a landmark, more than a movement. It had become what Tom always dreamed it could be, a home for anyone who needed one, even if just for the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee and remember they're not alone.